ỌDADEƐ Radio.
Well, good evening, listeners, and good afternoon, good evening, listeners, depending on where you are. Welcome to ỌDADEƐ Radio and Light for Life. Light for Life is a regular Sunday night program where we tackle issues concerning the Christian walk. I am Adotei Abraham's class of 81. I'm not the regular host, but the regular host, Reverend Godwin Kwashi, is on here with us. But I'm delighted to be hosting this program this evening. I keep saying this afternoon. I'm coming to you from Joplin, Missouri, where it's only just a few minutes before 1 o'clock. So I keep saying afternoon. I know it's evening in Ghana. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We are going to have a very, very interesting discussion this evening. We're going to be talking about personal finances from a Christian perspective, and also talk about Christian stewardship. But before we do that, let me as a true blue ỌDADEƐ, let me just say congratulations to every ỌDADEƐ for the 8th win in the NSMQ, and to our winning boys, congratulations, well done. You keep flying the flag of Presec high, and I like to say this. We are just happy to be able to compete in this competition and to be able to do this. So kudos to our boys, and we give God the glory for all the things that He has done. So this evening, I want to welcome you once again. We are going to be talking about Christian personal finances, and I have with me a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Professor Vera Fiador from the School of Administration at the University of Ghana, or the University of Ghana Business School, as they call it now. It used to be the School of Administration when I went to school, but it's now the Business School, University of Ghana. So we want to welcome Reverend Fiador. Not Reverend, Professor Fiador. Maybe I'm prophesying. Maybe I'm prophesying. She might be a reverend very soon. I'm prophesying. So, and I'll introduce her shortly. Before we get into the meat of our program, let me give you our social media handles as we talk about this topic. This is a very important topic, and this topic came about over the last few weeks. We've been talking about problems in our Christian walk, and one of the issues that came up was that a lot of us have issues with our personal finances, making decisions that sometimes seem to go contrary to what God would want us to do. So we decided, let's bring in I don't want to call an expert, but let's bring in somebody who actually knows what they are talking about from both a professional point of view and also from a Christian perspective. And as I introduce Reverend Fiador in just a minute, you understand why. But before we go in on there, let me give you our social media handles. We'll be taking questions. This is one of those programs where the more questions you ask, the better it is for us, because we are able to answer the questions directly and able to give you some tips on how to handle your finances. So here are, you can follow us on Facebook, ỌDADEƐ Radio or ỌDADEƐ Radio Ghana. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at ỌDADEƐ Radio, at ỌDADEƐ Radio. We're also on our YouTube channel, ỌDADEƐ Radio. On WhatsApp, if you have any questions, or if you want any questions, you want to send up a WhatsApp or SMS, in Ghana is 02000929925. Again, the number, our WhatsApp and SMS number is 02000929925. I always get the number of zeros wrong. It's 02 3 zeros and then 92925. Okay. You can also call in directly to the studio at 030-255-1014 or 000-92925 as well. So thank you all for joining us. And as we get along, I'd like to introduce a couple of other people who are on the Zoom call with me. I know there are other people listening via YouTube and via the Zeno app. I have on the video call with me Reverend Kwashi, as I mentioned earlier on, and also Niboy Jani. Both of them are from the 81 year group. Niboy Jani is a life coach. He calls himself a researcher. He's an author and a life coach. He's written a lot about how people should handle their finances and about retirement, how to be successful. His latest book is out. I'll let him introduce his book somewhere, plug his book somewhere later on during the show. So welcome, gentlemen and lady, to the program. So Professor Fiador, welcome again. Let me introduce, I'm going to do a short intro and then I'll ask her to say a little bit about herself. But Professor Fiador, I call her Vera. She likes to be called Vera. She doesn't like to be called Prof. But I'll call her Prof for the purposes of this program. Is an associate professor in the School of Administration or Business School at University of Ghana, and also a member of Trinity United Church, where she actually, if I get this correct, she serves on the church council and is also a member of the Young Adult Fellowship. So, Prof, welcome. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Okay, so thank you, Reverend Professor Liadote. Okay, so yeah, in terms of the church council, I was then on the past council, so they've done a new one and I'm currently off. But yes, you're right, I fellowship with Trinity United Church and a member of the Young Adults Fellowship. And then in terms of an official form, I, like you rightly said, an associate professor of finance with the University of Ghana Business School. And then on the side, I do run a consulting firm that's called Madeolu Consult, where I'm the principal consultant, and we are into management consulting and corporate training. So yes, we do train in these areas, and our very last gig on this was with Consolidated Bank Ghana, and I think we had an engaging session. And I think, like you rightly said, this area is a very thorny area for most Christians. I think we leave it hanging, and so maybe there's a good opportunity, and I feel privileged to be here to speak on the issue. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Niboy, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit before we go on with this? Say a little bit.
You've already introduced me. My name is Niboy Jani. I'm a student of the subject and a discussion. I'm a life coach and an author. Like I said, I'm not here as an expert. I myself am learning, but I'm glad to share what I've learned so far and what I've written about, and hopefully we'll all, benefit from the discussion.
Amen to that. So, as we like to do on this program, we like to start off with an anchor scripture, and Professor Fiador gave us a scripture that I actually really like, and it's from Luke chapter 14, verses 28 to 29. Okay, Luke 14, 28 to 29, and it says this. And I'm reading from the New International Version. It says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Wouldn't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and you are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you. There's something that comes to mind. I'm not going to get political on this, so I'm not going to say it. But I say, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Wouldn't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and you are not able to finish it, everyone sees it and will ridicule you. So, the Bible clearly states that before you take on any venture, you have to understand what the cost is. You have to understand the finances. You have to understand finances if you are going to build anything. A lot of times, a lot of Christians have this notion that God will provide. But the Bible clearly states that we should have a plan. Yes, God will provide, but we should also have a plan. And that is where I'm going to start off. I'm going to ask Prof to pick it up from there and say, what do you say to people who say that God will provide and therefore they have no plan?
Yeah, it's a very dangerous part if you ask me. And I even like to go back to the anchor text again. And the part that has always, should I say, tickled me the most, if you look closely at it, it was actually said by the Lord Christ himself.
Amen. That's right.
So what it means is that if the one who can turn water to wine, raise the dead back to life, cause the blind to see again, the deaf to hear, the dumb to speak, the lame to walk, he says, sit down and count the cost. Then I don't think we have any excuse as Christians, because we are seeking to be like the Lord. He says, sit down and count the cost. Whenever we do cost counting, actually in the world of business, and that's the skill of budgeting, you begin to look at it. So budget for it, because in budgeting for it, sometimes you may realize that you truly cannot do it, or you could scale it down, or it means that you may want to change the approach, because like it rightly said, you could become a ridicule. I know that sometimes a lot of people, immediately you bring up the issue that they must of necessity plan. One of the first rebuttals you get is Matthew 6:34. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And then they seek to silence you. But I think sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot when we do that, especially as Christians, because we find those who may not be professing to be Christians following these very standard principles that are in the Bible for us to follow, and they flourish, and then we find ourselves wanting, because either we start something that genuinely we shouldn't have started in the first place, or we started on a scale, or we do a lot of things that, because then we don't count the cost. We don't begin to look at its implications to ask whether truly we can do it. And when we do that, it's more problematic, because in a sense, I look at it as a bit of a bad evangelism, because somebody looks at you and they do not aspire to be like you, because then your lifestyle does not reflect the tenets of somebody who's liberated. Because once we have salvation, doesn't mean we're going to have all the money, but it means that whatever money that we are given, we make it count. And the main way to do that is to budget for it. And so as a Christian, it's important that, for example, start by taking stock of all revenue streams that you have that are constant. If you ask me, you may want to drop the ones that are not so constant, because those ones are windfalls. They come once in a while. But you begin to look at the constant flows. And then you know that, okay, for example, all that I ever get is 5,000 in a month. Now you have to live within that 5,000. And that means you sit down and begin to count the cost. Are you living in the right neighborhood? Or you are living in a neighborhood that is above your pay grade? Are you driving the right car? Or you're driving the car because for some reason you have fallen prey to the spirit of covetousness. So everybody's driving a 5.7 liter engine, and you also want to acquire one so that you belong. And in the process, you actually cause yourself more anxiety, because instead of enlarging your tent, in this case, you actually enlarge yourself into bankruptcy, because you suddenly have bills that are beyond you that you cannot pay. So whenever people make that statement, I think it's a very dangerous one to say God will provide. Yes, he will provide, but we are the images of God down here on earth. He is up there. And so even if he is providing, clearly the actions that would show that truly he has provided and not left us in poverty and in ruin is how we execute. So he provides, we execute. And I think when it comes to that angle, maybe we would have to put it a bit in perspective. So that's what I can say for now.
Well, thank you for that. You mentioned right off the bat, you talked about budgeting.
Yes.
What is a budget, and how does one go about preparing a budget?
Okay. All right. So when we talk of budgeting in the actual, let's say, academic sense, we say that the budget is a monetary reflection of your plan or your strategy. So for example, if I'm going to the market, the list if I plan to cook balanced meals for my family, so the plan is to provide balanced meals for my family for the entire month. Whatever goes into providing it, so I would have then come up with the menus that should go on the various dishes that will go on for the entire month, and then I would have costed the quantities that are required, and then now decide on the ingredients and therefore the costs of what it would take to provide that. And so, strictly speaking, when you see my budget, you should be able to glean to a large extent what my goals are. And so even before we start the concept of budgeting, you'd want to set out your goals. Anything that you need to do that requires the use of money, you need to plan for it. And so you may sit down and put into perspective, what do you want to attain or do within the next 2 years maximum, or 1 year? For maybe we'll do for the first 1 year. That's short-term goals. So short-term, you'd want to be able to put up an emergency fund. An emergency fund here is about something that would cover your typical monthly bills between 3 to 6 months. All the better if you can make 6 months, but at least having about 3 to 6 months store, which is quite liquid, which you can fall back on in the case of an emergency. That's what we call it, an emergency fund. And so if, for example, you do spend 5,000 a month, it means you need to have some kind of money stashed away to the tune of about 15,000 cedis, which whenever you get an emergency, like the day your car breaks down without telling you, and nobody's car tells them they're going to break down, you could comfortably do that. Anything comes your way that is not anticipated, to a large extent, you can just hold the fort. So you would have your plan. So the first one means so we want to have an emergency fund, and the amount needed is 15,000. It means we're not going to work at it. Then we're going to have the next 2 to 5 years, for example. What do we want to do? I want to acquire masters. I want to do A, B, C, D. I want to get myself a new car. I want to do blah, blah, blah. That one too comes up. And then we have the longer term goals. Now, one of the reasons I'm mentioning goals is because once you begin to put down the goals, there's empirical research to prove that those who actually write down their goals are able to achieve them better than those who just keep the goals in their head. So once you put these together, now we need to make sure, do you have enough to be able to achieve these goals? For example, your emergency fund, getting yourself a master's, getting so and so this and that. Now, once you sit down, one of the first things you'd want to do is to take stock of your personal finances. The first one being that you'd want to find out, like a business, you can actually you should look at yourself as a business. What's your typical revenue stream and what are your expenses? Now, how you are spending and how you are, should I say, making revenue, literally that's your master budget, which is more like your personal income statement, and then you would have your personal balance sheet as well. Now, with the budget, you sit down and then you begin to put items down. So food, there's a line item to it. Fuel for the car, there's a line item to it. And all the items that relate to your life, you put the line items to them, and then you have a target spending. The reason you would have that budget is because as human beings, our desires are insatiable. So if you don't tell the money where it should go, it will soon direct you where it wants to go, and usually goes into the weirdest of things. So a budget is literally telling your money where you want it to go and not wondering later where it actually went. So with a budget, you know that I intend to spend no more than, let's say, 500 cedis on entertainment for the month. And so as you're spending, you're taking stock. By the time you hit 500, you know that you have hit the limit. Any extra spending beyond that means that another line item would have to be adjusted. And so it sort of brings some kind of control to your life. It's not because you're going to take away your joy because people say happy yourself, but more importantly, it gives you a chance to control this very funny entity called money. If you allow it, it can control you. And like I said, it doesn't normally control you in the nicest of ways. And so a budget is one way to control that so that it does not control you and make your life miserable. Also, to do a budget, like I said, you sit down and take stock of your life and where it is you want to go. Because if I want to have a wedding in the next 5 years, the kind of budget I'll have will be very different from somebody whose plan it is to build a house in the next 10 years. And so the line items, if my children are in school, depending on the levels, my budget lines could be very different from somebody who is now starting up. If I have aged parents or aging parents who I take care of, depending on what it is and what systems are in place, my budget will look quite different. So the budget is a reflection of you and the things that you would want and need to spend your money on. And the easiest is just to take a stock of your life. So start with the basics: food, shelter, clothing. And then you begin to add on things like children's school fees, if any. So of course, when I say food, shelter, clothing, so you're looking at your food bills, your renting, if anything, or for those who are on mortgage, that means your mortgage payments, anything on house maintenance beyond the mortgage, school fees, and any other maintenance, utility bills, etc. Any other kind of expenditure that you may want to undertake. And so when you do have a budget, sometimes what it does is it begins to put, should I say, names to where your money goes. And sometimes you can even use that to do some kind of expenditure analysis, especially to be able to determine what is actually gobbling up more of your money. You may be surprised to know that your outing with friends actually takes up maybe 20-30% of your salary without you realizing, and that could be the issue. So just take stock of the things that you do, from rental, mortgage, food, clothing, entertainment, family, whatnot, art, church, your tithing, your whatnot. You make a whole list. And so what you would realize is that when you start putting the amounts down, it begins to sometimes even tell you whether you are spending beyond your capacity. So for example, in your home, you have a DSTV, you have unlimited internet data, and then together with that, you may have Netflix, Prime Video, all the cables and the whatnot, Showmax, you just name it and you have it. And then by the time you take stock, you realize that comparing that to your revenue sources, you are actually not having enough to save, because part of the reason you would also want to live within a budget is to be able to take stock of where your money goes, and if possible, use that to be able to start gleaning off some extra money that you would have to save. So the budget then gives you a chance to first put down some savings before you spend. I think a lot of us actually do the reverse. We spend before we save, and that creates problems. So a budget, in a sense, because it's before the fact, ex ante, what is happening is that before the money comes in, you're taking stock of everything, and then you realize that, no, this is not good enough. If I want to save this much, for example, towards my goal of acquiring a master's, etc., this particular lifestyle, then it means you go back to the drawing table. What are the line items that are there? Okay, I'm doing DSTV, I'm doing full unlimited internet, and I'm doing Prime Video, whatnot, TV, Showmax, what have you. And so at that point, you'd have to make the hard call. What should drop? And that's when you begin to take charge of your finances. So that's how you go about it. It's a very simple process, actually, not very cumbersome.
That was I've written out a whole bunch of questions here that I want to get into, but before I do that, that was wow. Let me just say that one of the things that I picked up from what you were saying is that a budget becomes dynamic, right? That is somebody who is starting off just out of school, starting off will have a different budget than somebody who has a newborn baby or just newly married. and it's going to be different. That person's budget will be different. Even if the same person, if they have kids that are in school, that budget will change. And then if they become, as they get older, kids are in university or something like that, that also becomes different. And then at some point they have aging parents and the budget becomes different. So from what I'm gleaning from what you said is that one of the things from what you said is the budget is a dynamic process. It's not a one-time thing. It is something that you have to go back and look at on a regular basis. So like you said, you use another word, expenditure analysis, and basically what that means is that it allows you to be able to take stock of where your money is going. And this is one thing that you said also, and I'm just repeating this so that people will remember. It says that if you don't tell your money where it should go, your money will go where you don't want it to go. Okay, so in essence, a budget allows you to be able to have control over the decisions that you are making. Before I come back to you, Prof, let me give Niboy Jani a chance to say something briefly, if he has anything to say. Niboy, on all the things that we've said so far.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as Dave Ramsey says, a budget is your permission to spend. Okay, now the professor has covered, very, very important and basic ideas. Now I want us to go back to the Bible and why sometimes Christians or professing Christians find that people who they don't regard as followers of Christ are making inroads and are becoming rich and prosperous, and they are not. The thing is that the Bible, for me, is the basic book, of life. Now, the Bible, if you read it properly, is a management book. It has everything you can think of as to how to live your life, how to manage your finance and everything. Now, you can quote the Bible to support anything you want if you want to misquote it out of context. Now, so when people say that God will provide, well, God has already provided. He's giving us the blueprint of how to live our lives. Now, for me, prayer really has to do with asking God for the wisdom to enable us align our actions with our desires. That is what it is. People tend to pray for God to provide. That is not going to happen. He's giving you the tools, and we must just use those tools to do the things that we need to do for ourselves. Now, what I want to add is, before anything else, the basic is self-knowledge. How much do you know yourself? Because if you know yourself, you know what your values are, what your desires are, what your plans are. And so to plan, you must know who you are. What do you want? Where do you want to be 5, 10 years from now? And then, as the professor has said, start planning that way. I will leave it here. I have other point, but I'll leave it here and let you continue. As we go on, I will be expanding on them, but I'll leave it here. Self-knowledge. We must try and know ourselves, because I'm different from you, Niadote, and therefore my needs are different. My plans for the future are different from yours. So why should I follow your template? Because I think that you are driving a Mercedes and I'm on my bicycle. I don't know where you're going, but that's how we tend to live our lives. We look at the other side and say, oh, he's doing this art, I must do it. Covetousness. And that's actually anti-Christian, isn't it?
Very, very, very much so. And you basically touched on one of the questions I was going to ask. But before I ask that question to Prof, I just want to, you said something about God. The Bible is a manuscript. It's a management book. It's a manuscript for us. And I just want to, there's a verse that always comes to mind that I have loved since I was a kid. And it's 2 Peter chapter 1, from verses 2 through and 4. And it says that, this is Peter writing to the church, and he said, grace and peace be multiplied to you in the knowledge of God and of Jesus our Lord, right? As his divine power has given us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us by glory and virtue, which has been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you may be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that the world that is in the world through lust. So that is, that is what the Bible says. That is, God has given us everything that we need to live a godly life through the knowledge of him, which means that once you begin to study scripture, all of these principles become clear. The question I want to ask Prof is this, and Neboy touched on this. Okay, why is it that there are people who are not Christians? So I'm going to assume that they don't read the Bible, but they are successful. Does that mean that they are following some principles? Are there some general principles that are not necessarily quote unquote Christian, that even if someone is not a Christian, they can follow and be successful financially?
Yes, I believe that is the case. So like I also hold that view that sometimes when you take away what you call the spirituality aspect, where yes, Christ did change water to wine. So there's a portion where he says when someone is sick, lay your hands. Yes, there's that spiritual dimension. But sometimes I think we over spiritualize the things, and so we leave out the practical knowledge that is embedded in there. The Bible talks about so many things, an unjust balance is an abomination to the Lord. There's so many things, ethical business, what have you. So truly, these are basic principles of life. Like you said, a management manual. So if you're going to manage life, and the one who gave life, so he gave life, the rain falls on both the real plants and then the weeds as well. So if we all apply what God has given, but what you stand to gain is that if you're applying those in addition to a pious life and prayer and faith, it multiplies even more. That is where the power then comes in. So it means that we actually have the potential to do way more. But unfortunately, we are not applying the principles, and then we are expecting the other dimension to just kick in. So it is it's a two-pronged thing. It says faith without actions, dead. So the faith is there. Do the action. In addition to the faith that you know that my God, who is the one who owns all the wealth, he says, I'm a joint heir with Christ, and everything is in my power. Claim it. But in claiming it, make it work. I tell people jokingly that when Christ wanted to when he wanted to create wine, he could have just said, let there be wine, and there would be wine. But he said, bring me water. He brought the foundational element. It was a liquid, so the water was brought. He wanted to heal someone who was blind. We are made from dust. He took the dust, added the sputum, did what? He could have just said, see, and you see. So in some cases, you could see that you don't just sit and let it comes to pass. There's an action, and that is where I think sometimes as Christians, when we over spiritualize, we leave the action part and we are expecting the unseen part to suddenly morph into the real state, and that sometimes I think is a big ask, especially because in that case that's why. So we are not getting anything because we're also asking amiss, because we are not placing our asking within the perspective. We are supposed to work. It says even the one. So when we do the work, so when it comes to finance, they say count the cost. Don't ignore that aspect of it, and then ask God to just show up. That will be, I think it would be a bit of a dangerous move. It is always a dangerous move. So what you find happening is that the one who is rather not a Christian is applying the basic principles. He's flourishing. What it tells us is that when you apply those principles and you tap into the power of the Almighty God, you should even be doing exploits. But I think sometimes, genuinely, I think we all like the lazy approach. Sit and pray, it will come. And then we do that. Okay. And I think I would hear.
Yeah, well, that leads me to a question that somebody posted about a week ago when we started talking about doing this program. Yes, I'm going to read the question. Then there's another question, and then I'll let you answer, and then I'll let Neboy come in again and chime in again. So there are two questions. I'm going to read the first one that came a long time ago. This is from Zonda, and he read this. He said, many churchgoers, and I think you may have answered this already, but I want to make sure that this question is answered because it was posted a long time ago. But it says many churchgoers think they can just pray to God and their finances will be bettered. What does the Bible say about money, riches, and how or what role should a Christian what role should a Christian play in building their own personal finances? I think you've answered this, but I'll let you say something about it again, and then I'll ask the next question.
Okay, so one of the key texts I think we can also leverage on will be Proverbs 6:6-8. It says to go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise.
Prof, before you continue,
Which,
that was one of the favorite Bible quotations at evening devotion.
So you see, it said, which having no guide, this person has no guide, no overseer or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. So even in the past, when God provided manna, the Israelites had to go and collect it. It didn't just drop up in their bowls. So, the wealth is out there. Are we going out there to collect it the way we are supposed to? Because when he even provided manna, there was a formula for the collection, for the days when you collect and when you collect more than you needed for a particular season. And so, whilst God definitely does provide, he's giving you the talents. I think sometimes you can link that even to the parable of the talents. Some years were given 5, others were given 2, others were given 1. And then the one who was given 1 decides that theirs is not enough, so they've gone to dig the ground and they've put it in there. And then we go to sleep. Sometimes I think maybe for a number of us Christians, we sometimes behave that way. We think whatever it is we have is not enough. And so we don't even work it. Because if we worked it, we realize that those who worked it and added on, when the master came, the master also gave more in terms of whatever it is. So one of the key things that we have to keep in mind is that, yes, wealth and all belongs to him. And we are joint heirs with Christ, who is the Son and God incarnate. What it means is that we have access to that wealth. When you have access to there's a Bible text I'm trying to remember, but it talks about the fact that if there's a prince who literally ascends to become king, but he has no knowledge of the power that he wills, he's as good as a kid walking on the street who has no power. So when we do not invoke that knowledge, that wisdom that God has given us to manage our finances, we're as good as not even calling ourselves Christians. Because part of it is to be like him. We need to also evangelize to get people to, should I say, fall in love with the concept of being Christian. It's not about having wealth overflowing, but managing it so that you have peace of mind, so that poverty doesn't necessarily control you. I say that because a number of us can attest to the fact that when you're broke, simple questions can get you very irritated. Simple questions and you give foolish responses. And so you may be a Christian, but suddenly somebody is irritating you at work. Yes, the person is irritable, but your financial issues could get you to go overboard and suddenly begins to question whether you're truly a Christian or you're just doing lip service. And it may not ever dawn on you that the reason you become so irritable is because the bank account is not looking good. And it's not because there isn't sufficient money. It is because the money has gone to the wrong places. And so now the essentials are up. They need to be paid and you're hot. And so Christians have a very key role. I keep on telling people that we are the reflection of God's image here on earth. So whatever God does up there, he's giving us the wealth. We must claim it here on earth. So we must do the movements to claim. So you can't just pray and go and sleep. You must do the actions for whatever God has declared already in the higher realms to manifest here on earth for you. If you don't take charge, it won't happen. Thank you.
So thank you very much. And here's the second question, and then I'll let Niboy chime in, and then we'll go on a short break, and then we'll come back. before I ask this question, please remember we're taking questions and comments, not just questions, but also comments on our WhatsApp feed, WhatsApp handle. Our WhatsApp number is 02000929925, 02000929925. So here's the question from Apostle Albert Dawano. It says, it's Prof. Is it also possible that extenuating circumstances or situations could throw a person's budget out of gear? Examples are sickness, credit crunch, etc. So what if something happens, an emergency that is way beyond your control, and it throws your budget out of whack? What do you do?
Yes, it happens. Of course, nobody really knows tomorrow, and that's the reason. So of course, your budget is there. And remember, I mentioned the issue of the emergency fund. So that's one go-to area. So starting from today, if you don't already have an emergency fund, you need to do that. And the way to do that then is to take stock. So I'm going to count the cost again. How much does it take for you to have a typical or ordinary 1 month, for example? What do you spend on? What do you pay up, etc.? Put all of that together and try to stash away at least 3 times. All the better if you can do up to 6. Usually when that happens, it can throw your budget out of sync, but this becomes like a plug. And of course, that's when you go and a little extra. That's where sometimes we do take insurance, so that you may take insurance on some of the things so that it covers you. So sometimes, yes, car problems. Depending on which car problem it is and whether somebody hits you, your insurance should be able to cover. But just in case you haven't done that, sometimes the go-to place to dip in will be your emergency fund. So an emergency fund is very critical. That becomes like your insurance buffer whenever things go out of sync. And of course, yes, the economy sometimes can change. When it changes, you may have to sit back. What I realize that we all do unconsciously, when our income flow changes, our expenditure changes to match it. Sometimes it actually exceeds it. So every now and then, we are literally on a very tight leash. And so there isn't room to maneuver when situations arise so that we could, make moves. So like you say, a budget is a plan, ex ante, before the actual occurrence. So yes, because we do not control life, things can happen that we did not anticipate. The assumptions we made can change. What we fall on will be the emergency fund and other risk management measures we may have put in place. Now, when those ones are not working, unfortunately, then it means you come back to the drawing board to find out what needs to change. Sometimes it may mean taking some hard and fast decisions. Sometimes what I also have experienced, and I know others, sometimes we want to keep the lifestyle that we want to keep it, how we want to keep it. So we're used to, every now and then take the family out for a Sunday buffet at a restaurant, and it's like a standard Sunday routine. But yes, the economy has taken a bit of a nosedive. You may want to sit back and find out whether you can keep up your weekly routines, or this time around, you have a family meeting and readjust that to, for example, a once a month family time out there and the rest of it at home. So these are things that you can do. Yes, so clearly, yes, the budget could be thrown out of sync. But if you have an emergency fund, you are able to sometimes plug that in and then give yourself some time to do a replanning and begin to do some adjustments based on the occurrences that have come your way.
Okay, Niboy, if you have I have a couple more questions coming, but Niboy, I'll let you make a comment.
Sure. On the back of what she just said regarding the gentleman who was talking about the health issue, yeah, that's true. This is what I'll say. I'm going to mention 5 key areas that we need to pay attention to if we really want to manage our finances. Okay, assuming we are doing all the right things. Our health, that's basic. The kind of relationships we keep, our lifestyle choices, how we spend money, and the concept of frugality. Okay, now being frugal doesn't mean that you're cutting corners. Actually, frugality means that you spend money so that you do not have to spend any more unnecessarily. So let's take it, for example, you're going to buy a pair of shoes. One costs 1,000 cedis, very well made. The other one is 100 cedis. You may think, oh, 100 cedis is cheap, 1,000 cedis is more expensive. But well-made things tend to last longer, and they also have, offer intangibles. Okay, so for example, imagine wearing a shoe, a very well-made shoe, to a place. The aftermath of it, and compare that to wearing a cheap shoe, a cheap alternative. So being frugal means that you choose well and make it last. So it's also how we spend money. Sometimes we think, oh, it's too expensive. No, it may be expensive, but what is it offering you? So I would say that. So frugality, how to spend money. Now the health, for example, if your health is not good, doesn't matter how much you earn. One health emergency can wipe you out. So taking care of our health, exercising, and all the rest. Relationships comes back to the same thing. If your relationships are not good, you could save for your retirement or whatever, and one day you lose all that saving because of the kind of choice you made. And I talked about lifestyle choices. Yes, how do we live? If you want to go, for Sunday, brunches, fine. Can you afford it? It's not about just affording, but is it sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
But like we said, we always look at what other people are doing. So you have to decide what kind of lifestyle suits you and your pocket and go for it. I'll leave it here.
Thank you, Niboy. For those who don't know, Niboy is a lifestyle coach. So you can see the thread in his answer that there's a connection between finances, health, marriage. Almost everything is interconnected. Nothing stands alone. Okay, which kind of leads me to the next question, and kind of taking a little bit of a detour from personal finances to finances within the marriage. Here's a question from Edifico in New York. He says, since the man is the head of the family and the household, must he contribute, let's say, 60% to the family budget? Or let me ask the question a little more generically. How much should a man be contributing, and should he be contributing the majority of the finances to the household budget? I think we've moved a little bit from personal budget to household budget, but it's a question that came. So, Prof, this is to you first.
I think I would put it this way. I would leverage on the parable of the talents. If you happen to be a man, yes, you're the leader of the home. But if, for example, your wife makes 10 times your salary by virtue of whatever job she found herself in, it's about the two coming together as one. So it's a home budget. Each contributes accordingly. Yes, the man provides the leadership. Leadership is also part of it, inspiration. So I wouldn't say that it must be a 60% a hard and fast rule. No. I believe it's a balance that works out and brings the best of the two parties to the table. I believe when it says be not unequally yoked, it's a lot of things in one. So because when it so happens that, yes, in the typical framework where a lot of men may be the ones who have the money and provide, that's fine. If they have it, then they can provide. But if they don't always have it, and that the spouse, also whoever has more, should be able to provide more to keep the home a happy place. And so I wouldn't go all out and say it's a hard and fast rule. It's a partnership. It says the two are one. So I thought at which point do we separate and say this person must be 60? Each person should be ready to do 100 depending on what the other may be in a position. So at any point in time, we should all stand ready to do 100. And if all are doing 100 and 100 can hold the fort, of course, I believe that makes for an even more juicier financial boat as opposed to where you cut and then it so happens that, because yes, prices even on the market change. So if your salary is not changing accordingly for the price, that could be mental stress, which sometimes shows up like Niboy said in other very funny sicknesses that you cannot seem to put a hand on. Half of the time, the sicknesses we suffer from, when you drill down, is coming from stresses, and financial stress is one of the biggest problems most people face, especially in marriage. In fact, it creates a lot of problems. But no hard and fast rule. The two are one. Look at your budget and contribute to it as each is genuinely capable of doing. I think that's the best.
So here is a naughty comment from Zonda. So let me just read it. I'm just going to read it the way he wrote it. Okay. Hey, Prof. The point of separation is that the man's money is the family's money, and the woman's money is her money.
Oh, but the two are one. So how does, if they are one, it means their money is also one. So I don't see the separation here. It shouldn't, honestly.
No, okay, so let me take this another way. In my lifetime, and I've come across a few people. There are various ways, like it's different stroke for different folks, and I know there are different models of how marriages handle finances. You know, there are people who pull their money together. You know, both they have one account, the salary goes in, boom, they decide how much to save from which salary. I mean, everything is in one part. There's no hidden agenda. Everything is in one part. I'm not saying that all the other models are in their agendas. There are also others that say, okay, you know what? You take care of this bill, you take care of this bill, you take care of this bill, you take care of this bill. And it works. Others will sometimes say something like, okay, I make much more than you do. I'm going to put 60%. This is our monthly budget. I'm going to contribute 60%. You put in 40%. Or I'm going to do 70. You do 30. And then based on that, from there, we can pay off all our bills. And then whatever money you have left is left for you to do whatever you want to do. In your experience, I think I probably know this answer, but in your experience, what works? What is the best approach to handling finances in marriage? Because like you said, finances in marriages is one of the key, it's one of the fundamental trouble areas in marriages, especially for young people.
Yeah. So like you rightly said, one jacket doesn't fit everyone. So it works from person to person, or should I say from home to home. And so you have to decide which one actually works well for you. One of the key things I've come to also experience is that once in a while, everybody likes to have a sense of some individuality in some spending. You know, once in a while, you see something that you like, which your spouse might think is just frivolous for the sake of. Once it doesn't affect the home's finances. So I think the third model is what a lot of people seem to practice and get better with, in the sense that, okay, this is the family budget. This is what we are saving. I contribute this to the savings account. This is what we are using for home purchases. So I contribute this much to it. And then whatever is left after that is for me to pamper myself once in a while. And it gives, you know, a bit of freedom. So whilst there's that control in terms of, yes, we work towards a family budget, there's also that aspect of you get to spend some of the money on just, you know, taking care of yourself occasionally and just feeling happy. And I think it works also for the mental psyche. So I wouldn't necessarily prescribe. You may want to, one, understand, because I've come across a few young people where, depending on who is bringing in what, yes, I've heard stories and I've seen a few. So yes, an example could be that, yes, the one spouse, for example, the wife makes more money, and then for as long as the husband is fully aware of the money that comes in, there's always project after project and idea after idea. That's one. And then you also have the flip side, where the wife knows that the man makes some good money, and is always one demand after the other, and I want this and I want that. And so it's also important that in counting the cost implications of, and then also keeping in mind what Neighbor said about sustainability, whether you can sustain a certain lifestyle, you need to pick a model that takes into consideration the individual, should I say, strengths and weaknesses. If you happen to have a spouse who seems to still be battling with a bit of financial discipline, I wouldn't necessarily recommend a purely open, balanced because once the money is there, the spending will go on, and it only creates fights. So at that point, there's a need to maybe work the model of what account is touchable and what account is not touchable, and how you guys will populate those accounts for the purposes of the family. Where both parties are, quite on top of their financial discipline, why not? They know that this money is not touchable. So nobody is going to end up spending the money and hiding the spending from the other party. So one model is not entirely a perfect deal, but its workability is dependent on the personalities that are in the union, and that also means, so it comes back to know thyself, self-awareness, and also knowing your partner. So if you know that your partner is one that maybe once they see the money in the account, they cannot stop themselves from that shoe or that tuxedo and that whatnot, you may want to immediately open a certain bank account that requires that two of you must authorize before the money moves. But if anyone can authorize, before you know it, you are sitting with holding a bank card that has empty zero balances, and that doesn't augur well for anyone. Yeah.
Niboy, any comments?
Okay, I will say this: the issue of having and considering our money philosophies. Look, marriage is two people coming together from varied backgrounds. Okay, you could have your families where they will tell you money doesn't grow on trees. So you have people who may have a lot of money, but they are fearful of losing that money. Now, you may also have somebody else coming from a family where, well, money was never a problem. So they just spend money like, like the sea sand. For them, they spend money without knowing where money comes from and its proper use. So if you have such two people from these two backgrounds, what do you think is going to happen? You may have a man who comes from the scarcity mindset philosophy where money doesn't grow on trees. So, hey, why do you want this? Why do you want that? And the woman may be the one who, she came from a background where money was not a problem. She doesn't even know, where money comes. She never had to worry about money. So for her, buying the next shoe is not a problem. So it's up to the two people to come together and say, listen, what is going to be our guiding principle as far as our finances are concerned? And I think most of the time, talking about finance and things, they are not very romantic, but they are fundamental to success. But we cannot skip them and think that things will work out. Things don't work themselves out. So that's what I would say. We need to sit down and agree that as a family, this is how we approach our finances.
Well, thank you. I have a couple of questions that people have asked, but before we go on, before I bring up those questions, and for the sake, because for the sake of time, we're going to skip our break because I think there's a lot of things we want to talk about here. I want to go back to the issue of budgeting. Let's say someone has never had a budget. They've always done things off the cuff, and they're listening to us right now, and they're like, you know what? I would like to start a budget. Where can they start? Or how do they start? And I ask this question because I have come across people who tell you, oh, I don't know where, I don't know. I mean, and this was back in the day when we didn't even have the tools. And I know that, and I'm kind of teasing the answer to the question here. There are tools available online to help people budget and stuff. Can you point us, how does one start budgeting? Are there tools available for us to budget? And can you point us in the direction of some of these things? And I'll let both of you answer this question. Prof, you can go first, followed by me, boy.
Okay. So even without the apps, I think there are quite a number of apps. I downloaded one to teach somebody. I think I've forgotten the name, but because I do mine mostly manually, and Excel is one, or even a simple book is fine. Once you could use your pencil and eraser so that you can, sometimes if you make a mistake, you can clean it out and polish it well. So when you want to start a budget, like I said, now there are apps you could use. So just downloading a free one could help you. But it's the basic principle you must get right. So you need to put down the relevant items. So food. If you have a And when you talk of food, you now have to get down to the nitty-gritties. You do breakfast, you do lunch, you do supper. What is the typical cost that you're going to put? So if it's a family, what do we spend on? So we normally will do, if we have our cocoa with our granite and some bread, and then you have a sense, so you begin to, and it actually is, in the early days, it looks like a little bit of work trying to break it down, but you put down estimates in terms of, okay, so assuming I'm putting down 10 cedis in this case per head per member of the household. It means that if I have a 6-member household, mother, father, 4 children, it means that I'm looking at breakfast to the tune of 60 cedis per head per day. In terms of, so now a 30-day month, it means 60 times 30. That means my breakfast is roughly like, what, 1,800, okay? So we put it on lunch, what's the budget? Supper, what's a rough budget? And so you put all of that together, it means your food bill is literally sorted, roughly is an estimate. Then we come down to rent. How much are you paying per month? You put it down. How much are you spending on clothing, if any? Do you buy every month? Maybe you don't, but you buy quarterly. You do spend on some stuff. And then you would then decide to get a rough monthly estimate for your clothing. Then we come down to school fees. How much are you paying for your children in school? And so if you're paying on termly basis, it means that every term is 3 months. And so if you decide that you're even going to do, and we do 3 terms in a year typically. So if we go by the termly structure, that's 3 terms, you add the school fees you're supposed to pay, divide that by 12, and that gives you a rough estimate for tuition fees, etc., for your children in school, etc. And that's how you go around and you add on. So maintenance, do you do any maintenance? How much water do you spend? Electricity, how much electricity have you bought over the last 3 months? If you have the receipts, you should be able to get a monthly average. And so you keep on adding all of this. When you're buying fuel, do you take receipts? Most of us don't. Maybe there's an opportunity to, every time you go to buy fuel, what's your typical buy? And when you do, how long does it take before it runs out? So you should be able to proxy for the month. So for example, when I go and I have to fill my tank for 500 cedis every week based on my routine, what it means is that in a month, I'll be spending 2,000 on fuel. I put it down. And so that is how you get to the budgets, and then you have the costs expenditure side. And then to make it holistic, we have to look at the revenue side. That is when you begin to notice whether you're living above your means, in which case sometimes you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're spending next month's salary even before it shows up. So budgeting, you don't need any super special skills to do budgeting. Just ask yourself, what am I spending on what, and what is coming in? And so when you finish with your food, shelter, clothing, then you want to add a few other incidentals. When you do wake up, you definitely do brush your teeth. So we're going to take stock of things like your toothpaste and whatnot. How many times do you buy in there? You'll be bathing with soap. And so that will be the other sundries that you need. So you take stock of those. And then you make room for other things, maybe some maintenance here and there. And that's typically a budget. And as you grow, like I said, it's dynamic. So as you move on, some items that you didn't know about, you would take stock and then you put them down. Some of us actually like to spend time with friends every Friday nights, and it's boys chilling, etc. Who does the spending? You may want to put that on your budget. And when you take stock of everything and it's fine, and it still leaves you enough to save for the rainy day, because a rainy day could come any day. When it doesn't leave you enough, then because of this very budget, you can go back to the drawing table and begin to trim some of it. Now, let me add one brief thing, is that when you need to spend, you need to be guided by some principles. Sometimes I like to call one of them that I learned over the years, Muscal, meaning capital M, small u, capital S, capital C, small o, and a W. And each of the capitals actually stands for, should I say, framework. So mus is must. So there are some things that are essential. Yes, food, shelter, clothing, essential. But within the food, shelter, clothing, essentials, for someone to say, oh, what if I've done the budget and yes, I've put in all the essential, but the money is not enough. What do I do? There are some things that are essential in the broad sense, but the fine details, you may be working more in terms of wants versus needs. So yes, food is important, but we can have a breakfast of some Spanish omelette with some sauteed baby broccoli with a side of baked beans and something to go with, and some toast and etc. with salted butter. Now that is breakfast, possibly balanced, all things being equal. But that can cost a fortune versus having a typical cocoa with some groundnuts and some bread to go. You still have had a balanced diet, but within a budget. And so these are things that you could look at. Once you put the budget together, it gives you a sense of whether you are a walking disaster, literally walking dead, because your money is all gone and there's nothing to save for the future. Because God being good, we will go on retirement. And when we do, you're supposed to be relying on what you saved up before the retirement hits you, and that can be very problematic sometimes. So I'll leave it here.
B-boy.
Yeah, Vera has said everything. I'll just reframe it as a life coach. Now, the humble pen and paper, that's all you need.
Okay.
Pen, paper. Now, you have to ask yourself a basic question. What kind of lifestyle do I want for myself and my family? Okay. Now, what you want is different from what you need. You may want to live in a certain neighborhood, but will your finances support that? Which means that what you need is just a roof over your head, a decent place. Sometimes we follow trends. Okay, we say we are middle or upper middle class or wherever we pitch ourselves. Define the lifestyle you want. Write everything down. I want to live here. I want to eat this kind of breakfast. Now look at the inflows. How much do you earn? Will what you earn cover the basic costs? If they can't, fine. If they cannot, then you have to zero-base that decision and say, knowing what I know now, how quickly do I remedy the situation? Okay, so you may be buying conflicts and realize that conflicts is costing so much. Now, those are expensive. What about cocoa and Cartier? It works. But sometimes we get so attached to certain lifestyles and we don't want to hear any other thing. Life isn't like that. You have to adjust. And being able to respond to changes in circumstances is one of the best ways of surviving financial problems. And actually, in any problem, you have to be able to adjust and be resilient. So I would say, yes, you want to live there, you want to eat this kind of food. Can you afford it? Can you sustain it? Look at your lifestyle, determine what kind of lifestyle you want, and see whether you can afford it. And then adjust your expectations and your expenditure accordingly.
So let me follow up on that question, on that note, and say, let's say, you've made mistakes in the past. You didn't budget. You didn't put away money. You are at the point of your life where you're about to retire, which is the case for most of my contemporaries. And you find yourself in a situation where you don't have cash flow. And you are basically looking at the abyss. What can you do? What can one do late in life? Now, I can understand when somebody is young and if you're a young person, you are starting life, this is great advice. But let's say not even middle life, but somebody who is towards the end of their career, 57, 58, getting towards retirement, and all of a sudden they don't have anything there. What can they do with their personal finances this late in life that allows them to live, let's say, the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years without increased stress? Let me put it that way. You understand the question I'm asking?
Yeah. Okay. Let me attempt something here. So you see, like you rightly said, when it comes to planning, especially for retirement, time is your friend, and compounding is one of the beautiful concepts if you ever get to understand and use. So in fact, you start for retirement planning the day you start working, because whether you like it or not, whatever has a beginning has an end. And so once you started working, you will end that work. And so that's one of the key things. So, but now that you're 57, 58, you're literally looking at retirement. B-Boy mentioned the word adaptability. It means sit immediately, take stock of your lifestyle, and then begin to readjust your lifestyle in anticipation of what it will look like when you go on retirement. So this is the time to speak to the pension agency to have a sense of how much you're likely to be receiving when you do go on pension, and then start the lifestyle changes required now. Because I think what has been the bane for most people is that they go into retirement, suddenly the shock is so much, it affects them mentally, and some actually die because of that. And so to avoid that, what you do is you're 60, 57, 58, you're literally walking out and you realize you don't have anything saved away. But at least if you do have your pension from the statutory agency, as the case may be, in our case, SNIT, etc., you want to get a sense of how much you will be receiving, and then you'd want to do that. Beyond that, then, of course, which is a principle that even applies to young ones, when you've looked at your entire budget and realized that there's no way your revenue stream can match it up, you may want to genuinely look at other revenue sources. If you've got a skill that can be converted into business, why not? You got some skill that you acquired over the lifetime of your career. Why don't you convert it into, so that it means that for you, your retirement may be a blend of the resting period plus a bit of, intermittent working, deploying skills and other whatnot that you have acquired over the period, so that you can make some extra revenue to top up. But one of the key things, adapt immediately and take a second look at your lifestyle in terms of expenditure, etc., and try to live within what would ultimately be your retirement income. And then you take it from there.
Hey, boy.
Yeah, I will say this. Simplify, simplify, simplify. You have to begin to simplify your life. Now, when I say simplify, I mean in totality, okay? You have to, for example, stop buying shirts and new shirts, because I go out, but I have suits I haven't worn for in the past 5 years. And so it's a waste if you look at how much money one has spent on it. And shoes. And so for many people, once you kind of come on retirement or semi-retirement, whatever it is, you are not going to need all those. So start simplifying your life. Now, a lot of us, for many people, our biggest investment is our home, the house, if you are lucky to have built one. That's your biggest investment. So a lot of your finance and your cash is actually locked up in it. Let's say if it's mortgage, it's mortgage free, or if you built it, then you own it outright. The thing is, I'll talk about Ghana. Abroad, I know it's easy. You can downsize, sell the house and buy a smaller one, get the equity, all that. In Ghana, the secondary market for for houses that have been lived in, it's next to nothing. You can't really, and we don't like doing that. So what I would say is this: the house, can you, instead of building the house that you finish when you're most people finish their houses when they are on retirement anyway. But we are building our be all and end all house, huge mansions. By the time you finish building your house, your 5-bedroom house, the children are on their own. You end up living there alone with your wife or spouse, whatever it is. So you must look at all those factors. Can you maybe convert part of the house into a flat so that you can get some cash flow from the rental and all that? Or can you actually leave that whole property and go and get some small 2-bedroom bungalow and live in, so you can get money from here. I have known people who are living in mansions, but they can't afford to eat because the money is all locked up. And in retirement, it's all about cash flow. If the cash doesn't come, you are dead, because our retirement is the point in life where the expenditures tend to increase and the inflows, tend to be So I will say simplify. Look at your assets, see whether you can actually put them to good use to bring you cash flow. Don't let the ego take over. Don't say that, oh, everybody knows me as having, living in this house, and now I'm going to live in a 2-bedroom. No, it's about your life. It's about survival. If you are driving a 2.5-liter Mercedes and it's, taking a much of your money, buy a 1.2 and use. And don't compare yourself with other people. It's your life, live it the way, that it suits you.
Okay, so here's a question, and this has to do with kind of along the same lines, but a little different, not retirement. It says, Prof, let's face it, in Ghana, the monies that people are earning can not take them for even 3 weeks, let alone allow them to save. In this scenario, what do you do?
Okay, so for a lot of us, genuinely, we can save. It's all about the mindset. So let me give you an example. Yes, so you're used to your rice and stew. So let me get to the basics. You're used to your rice and stew all the time. You're used to having your Milo and your, we just have polished ourselves into a certain lifestyle. But if you put pen to paper, you could save some. So sometimes for some, it boils down to having more soups on your menu compared to having more stews. Some of us would want to cook with corned beef, and honestly, if you're cooking with corned beef and it's not Exeter and it's not 2 of them in the bowl at once, it doesn't add up. But I can tell you from the market straight that 1 can of Exeter, which will not do justice to any meal typically if you really want to feel it, is the same as the price for a crate of eggs. And definitely, I'm yet to see anybody who put the whole crate of eggs in one meal per se. So strictly, it's about certain choices. There's a difference between shopping for your tomatoes at a ShopRite versus deciding that the way things are going, I'll go to a Revolution on a market day, or arrange to have it done on a market day for me, so that you're getting the produce straight from the market. And then there are times you own a car. Why drive yourself in a fully air-conditioned car from, let's say, Adenta to Accra, when your colleague who is with you in the office also drives from Adenta to Accra? Can you guys agree, for example, to carpool, so that week 1 and week 2, for example, it is Fiador who is doing the carpooling? We all sit in the car. You actually even begin to bond anyway, and then get to work and then come back together. And then the last 2 weeks of the month, it's Vera who is going to do the carpooling. So that instead of the 1 month where I'm fueling the car, like I said, I fuel my car 500 cedis, for example, every week. Now, instead of 2,000 cedis for fuel, I've immediately halved it to 1,000. That's something that we can work with. So honestly, it's when you put everything on pen to paper, you begin to see some of the places that you can call leakages, things that you can adjust without anything happening to you. It doesn't change who you are. Sometimes it even means coming together with friends to buy something in bulk, because sometimes there are a lot of discounts that you can get when you do bulk shopping. Because sometimes by the time you're doing the bulk purchase, you get almost a third of the price of it, as opposed to picking just one item off the shelf as and when you need it. And so if it means coming together with a group, you just have to be ingenious. Yes, Ghana currently is tough, and so we need to actually move outside of the standard way of doing things, and begin to think. So carpooling, a lot of Ghanaians, we don't do carpooling. So you drive through town and you see each and every one of us driving individual cars all rolled up, and we all driving to Accra, and we all go and park the cars from 6:30 a.m. or some of us reach the offices or 7, and we all move at 9 p.m. and the cars are still there. They don't have any value between that 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. when we move. How about carpooling to save something?
Me boy.
Yeah, I think it's a mindset thing, you know. Now, if you can't save from 5,000, you cannot save from 1,000,000.
Mm-hmm.
Basic principles there are financial principles, and you people, the two of you know more about those than I do. Listen, it's also in the Bible. Okay, save a little, save a little, save a little. If you can't save a little, you can, from what you have, you cannot save much from the bigger one. Now, the reason why the Jews are said to be very, very rich, and it's true, is because in their culture, they practice these principles. In Jewish culture, actually, they give, there's a particular festival where they give children money based on how well the children have done in school. And they tell you, save it. In Ghana, when I give a child money, I say, toffee, use it to buy toffee. So immediately, for us, money is for spending. We don't have that culture of saving. Whatever comes in must go out. You see, if you don't save the little, imagine that Jewish boy saves a little. By the time he finishes school, he has a lot of money. When we give our children money for whatever reason, we say, oh, use it to buy this. We actually instruct them what they should use the money for. We never talk about saving. So when someone says, oh, the money is not enough, it's about the principle. Okay, if you discipline yourself and go by the principle, you will learn it. It becomes part of you. When you get bigger income, you will save bigger. Most of us, when we get a salary raise, what do we do? We up our standard of living to absorb the raise. We don't think about putting that money aside. So we will never have enough. We will never have enough unless we decide to apply the basic principles in financial planning. Save first. Saving is actually paying yourself. When you save money, you are paying yourself first. Most of us pay other people before we pay ourselves. We buy everything we want to buy before, if anything is left, we save. That's the wrong way around it.
Well, thank you very much to both of you. We have just about 5 minutes left, maybe 4. And I know Prof has a program coming up, and I'd like you guys to have your concluding comments. And I know, boy, you have a new book out. So, Prof, I'll let you go first. I was trying to look for the flyer to get to our guy to display on the screen, but I can't find it. I know you have a training coming up. Tell us a little bit about it. And I know I was teasing you about it the other day, but tell us a little bit about your seminar coming up, and then any concluding comments you might have.
Okay. Well, the seminar that is coming up, it's on strategic planning for small businesses. So having worked with a number of SMEs over the years, one of the things you realize is that a lot of them do what we like to call pay as you go. You go to the office and you check, oh, do this, do that, do that. There's no structured approach, because most of them think that whenever you talk of strategic planning, it's for the big shots, the big businesses, etc. But one thing they do forget is that every big business started small, and they became big because they took their strategic planning seriously. Strategic planning is about where do I want to go, and therefore what do I need to get there. And so looking to put together, it's actually a 10 slot, so it's very limited because it's supposed to be hands-on practice where you get to know what really you should be looking at. So we are planning into 2024. What do you want 2024 and the years beyond to look for your small business? Because that's what makes up our economy anyway. When they fail, the entire economy fails. But when they do work out, they provide employment, etc. So it's more of a desire to see the SMEs grow, take charge of their visions, their missions, and then execute them flawlessly to see profitable businesses all over the place. So that's what it is.
Where is it going to be? If people are interested, how do they get in touch? All of that. And
so
I'm sorry I couldn't find the flyer.
Oh, no problem. So it's the case of it will be at the conference room at Madiolo Consult on the North Legon Agbogba Road. So anybody who's interested can call 0269 244 733, and that comes to the office, and so they will get all their, and it's at for a cool price of 690 cedis only, which is nothing compared to what the value that you derive when you're able to put together a strategic plan that moves you from a small firm to something bigger, and also a shaker in the realm of business. So that's
all right. Could you if you could send your flyer to me, I will share it on our various platforms and get the word out. And I'm sorry, I thought I had it, but I think I forgot that it was on your status, not on your page, on our personal. I thought it was on our personal conversation. So I was looking for it, and I realized that I actually commented it from your status, so I couldn't find it. Anyway, so you share it with us. We shared on our page and try to advertise it as much as we can as well. Niboy, go ahead. We know you have a new book out. We are very proud of you, our prolific writer. Tell us about your new book.
Thank you. The new book was published last week. It's called Running Up That Hill, What Does Success Mean to You? And it really has to do with the meaning of success. You know, what does it mean to be successful? You know, most of us define success in financial terms. Society tells us so, you know, and we kind of accept it. However, the truth is that success is how we define it for ourselves. Okay, so what's your purpose? What's your life's mission? What's your vision? What makes you happy? And we tend to compare ourselves to others. And when we do that, we feel small, even like a failure. But you see, to be successful, it has to be on your own terms. You know, you have to define it for yourself. And once you know what you are looking for, then you can go ahead and have it. It's like trying to shoot at a target without knowing where the target is. If you want to be successful, you must actually know what you want. What does success mean to you? It's different from, for each of us. So that's what the book is about. It's already being sold on Amazon worldwide. So thank you for allowing me to pitch it.
Well,
it's brand new.
We will definitely. I think that's my. I'm coming to Ghana in December. That's my read on the plane. That's my plan to read that on the plane on my trip down. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. So thank you very much. Well, on behalf of ỌDADEƐ Radio, I want to say thank you. This has been a most fascinating. There are other questions we could have asked, but we are out of time. And I know there's a program that comes right after us. So Prof, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I know I owe you one. I'll be seeing you in about 4 weeks. Niboy, thank you for honoring me in the last minute. Excuse me. You're a true brother and a gentleman, and wishing you all the best. So thank you all very much for honoring our invitation to be on the program. To our listeners out there, thank you all for listening, tuning in, and thank you for the questions that came. Once again, this is Light for Life, a Sunday program on ỌDADEƐ Radio. Until next week, when we come back to you with another program, thank you and God bless you all. Have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Bye.